seems to be the one that's working better now. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, Dave Ross. Introduce yourself, mate. How are you going? Cheers for the whiskey. What are we
very well,
drinking?
thank you.
What are we drinking?
We are drinking.
Just speaking to the mic there,
Sorry,
mate.
the Balvenie. It's a 12-year-old double wood, made in 2 distinct casks.
Love it. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
It's
a
very
good friend of mine got me a bottle of
Smooth.
it for my
Very
50th
smooth.
birthday, and I enjoyed it so much I thought I'll get another one and we can
Drank it all,
have a
and then you
tipple.
needed to buy another one.
Yes.
No, we got a couple of whiskies on the table, but also what we're going to be talking about today is photography. Dave's been in the industry for a long time. You've been in the industry for 15 years now, full time 15 years.
Did have a corporate job prior to 2018.
Yep.
So I was doing them in tandem.
Mm-hmm.
2018, I was lucky enough to get a redundancy from that corporate role and launched into photography pretty much straight away. In fact, I had a resignation letter ready to go, and my boss came over about a month before we were due to go to Bali and dropped the news that he had to move my role to Sydney and gave me some options, one of which was a redundancy. So I happily took that, knowing that I already had this business established, and launched straight into it.
What a good situation.
Couldn't have paid
Get a
for
bit
it
of
to
a
be any
payout.
better. Yes.
There you go. That's awesome. No, super. It's a super good situation to find yourself in. I think, I guess the first thing I'm going to kind of dive into is you started off in weddings as a wedding photographer, right? You were mentioning.
Correct.
And you've developed, how long were you in weddings for? How long do you do wedding photography for?
About 4 years, probably pretty much flat out.
Cool.
That was most weekends, sometimes both days. Yeah, so it would have been around about the 4-year mark, thereabouts.
Sure. And you've kind of merged into the corporate industry now. That's more so what you've ended up in further down the track.
Yep.
So after 4 years of doing weddings, you throw in the towel? You just completely stop doing them?
Pretty much. I get roped into doing usually 1 or 2 a year now.
Yeah, right.
They're generally either smaller ones that are maybe just at a registry office and then a bit of a celebration afterwards.
Yep.
Or sometimes the odd family or family member or friend will be getting married and ask if I can do it for them.
Why did that happen? Why did you stop doing weddings? What was it about weddings that obviously, I don't know, didn't click, didn't like, or?
No, I really enjoyed them. I did a lot of it prior to being married and having children. So I would be travelling with my corporate job 3 or 4 days a week and then coming home on the weekend and going and shooting weddings. When I finally got married to my lovely wife, Mel, we had children fairly soon after, and I was still doing the corporate job. And to be out of the state for 3 or 4 days a week and then come home and tell her on a Friday evening, I've got a wedding to shoot tomorrow, and leave her with 2 kids who were essentially both babies at the same time, really didn't seem that great for a strategy for longevity for the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually went into a bit of a hiatus for a couple of years where I did very little shooting at all. And then when I came back into the industry, I knew I didn't want to get back into doing weddings 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So I sort of searched around for options which were also event type photography requirements, but didn't have the time demands, I guess, that weddings have on you sometimes.
Weddings are very hard and very demanding, and that's a really good point. Actually, it's that you are just shooting every single weekend, right?
Yeah, correct.
But you've managed to kind of build a business in photography that doesn't have the weekend work. So you work 9 to 5 through the week.
I'd like to say yes, 100%
More or less.
to that.
But you have a few events here and there, right? So just for any viewers or anyone watching, it's what you do is predominantly like headshot photography, commercial photography.
Yep.
You dabble in event work, I would say, or is event work more of the basis?
Corporate headshots and corporate events would be the...
So those two are your bases.
Yeah, that's
okay, cool.
that's predominantly what I spend time doing.
Yeah.
And then on the outside of that, there's a little bit of commercial work and also some personal branding stuff and things like that.
Okay, sure. So it's a lot of studio work, a lot of event work, but generally speaking, how many events are you shooting a week on average? Are you shooting crazy amount? Or?
It varies because some events run for the entire week.
Yes.
And other events are a one day or a one evening type scenario.
Mm-hmm.
I would say to average it out, probably 2 to 3 events per week, again, depending on the length of the event.
Yeah.
But generally, most of my days are taken up with event photography, and then around that, I fit in the corporate headshot stuff.
Yeah, right. Okay. So during the busy season, you're kind of then out all the time, right? You're shooting events week in, week out, or every week. Yeah,
100%.
Wow. Yeah.
There are different times throughout the year where there's different requirements for different kinds of events.
Yeah.
Throughout the normal course of the year, I guess you could call it, there are a lot of conferences and expos and things like that on. So a lot of the time is spent doing that. As we get closer to the silly season for Christmas, they tend to be shorter events. People aren't so interested in running 4-day conferences in December, but what we do have a lot of is Christmas parties and things like that. So a lot of the corporate clients that I service during the year for their headshots or their conferences start having their end of year celebrations, and so that's where I end up, my focus ends up towards the end of the year a lot of the time.
It's a really good industry, corporate, I think, personally. I think it's a very stable industry.
Yes.
And you do build those client relationships, and you are able to have consistent work year round, which is why I've pushed it a lot, because my business is marketed as a wedding photographer.
Yep.
The reason I do that is because weddings are so hard to book. Weddings are the hardest clientele to book, in my opinion. And if you're going to book a wedding, you need to sell the wedding service like full on. You need to have a marketing funnel. You need to present yourself as an expert in wedding photography, and you kind of just need to like really capture the clients, I find, and bring them in. Whereas corporate, you can kind of build relationships, and then once you build the relationships, they'll just keep coming back to you. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right.
Yeah.
Again, with the time factor, with weddings like you do a lot of, there's several meetings leading up to the actual wedding itself.
So much work in the lead up, yeah.
And also developing the relationship with the bride and groom to be at that stage as well.
Mm-hmm.
With corporate stuff, you generally will receive an email, you respond to the email, try to cover off all their requirements and any questions that they might have in advance. Then you find out essentially whether you've won the job or haven't won the job, or they might want to do a little bit of a negotiation, which I'm always up for. Then you go and shoot the job, flick through the photos. I always do the best I can, and I think most clients are pretty happy with the work that I produce. And from there, that can end up being 3 or 4 times a year that you're doing events for the same client.
That's right.
And then they start inquiring about, well, we need headshots done as well. Are you able to do that? So you get a fairly well-rounded variety of work from the one client, provided that they've got that work available and that's what they need.
Yeah.
But it sort of feeds off itself a little bit after a while.
It really does. You don't need to push the marketing hard at all. I find once you build the client relationships in the corporate space, you're kind of in. Yeah. And that's something that I realized. And, I kind of built my network in corporate. And then once I had that, I said, I don't even need to put it on my website. They're just going to keep coming back, I do have it on my website. It's like one of the main things I shoot. It's corporate events, because I do a lot of corporate event work. Pretty much every week I have one corporate event,
We've done them together.
Yeah, we've done them together on photo and video. But it is a very consistent industry. It's something that you don't need to market too strongly. It's not like weddings, where weddings you have to really, really push, and it's difficult to secure your clients. Like you said, there's so much work in the lead up, and you need to put that into your hourly rate, I think. And I think that's part of the reason why weddings are so expensive. It's because as a wedding photographer, I know that maybe 3 in 10 inquiries will book, something like that, and each inquiry I'm spending a lot of time just to get them through into there's the cost of getting the lead first, and then there's the time I spend into nurturing those leads, and then at the end of it, you look at like the lead you get, you're spending like 20 hours of work just to get that one lead.
Absolutely.
And it's a bit of a crap situation, I guess, because couples have to spend more money to get a wedding photographer, but then how are you going to make a living as a wedding photographer? Because that's time. You got to charge for it. You can't just be doing 20 hours of client liaison before the wedding for free, because you're going to go out of business.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And weddings, I think, are a very different animal to corporate events. With the weddings, everything is based around emotion.
Yes.
So you're trying to service a client who's probably quite highly strung, whilst in the back of their mind they've got that this is going to be the perfect day. And you're really there to capture all of that. corporate events at the other end of the spectrum, there's a little bit of emotion involved. Everybody wants it to be done well, and they want their event to look like it's successful and it's been a high quality event.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not so much around the personal emotion. It's more around sponsors and stakeholders and senior management and people like that coming out of it looking really, really good and getting a lot of exposure in order to increase their business. So they're very different goals between having a wedding and actually shooting a corporate event, I find.
I completely agree. I have a bit of a mindset shift as well when I do the two different disciplines. I mean, look, there's overlaps. There's obviously your practical skills that are a big overlap. And, an event and a wedding are very similar in how you approach it in, the practical side of things.
Yes.
Yes, maybe as a wedding photography, you'll be a bit more artistic at times. You'll be a bit more creative in your lighting and whatever. Corporate events are a bit more symmetrical.
Yep.
But there's still overlaps. But I think, like you said perfectly, the biggest difference is who are you producing the images for? And you as a corporate client, you're producing the images for their marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, very rare that you actually shoot a wedding and then see it on a website and on various social media platforms. You've got to be mindful that when you're shooting a corporate event, that's predominantly what it's going to be used for.
Yes.
They really want to use that footage to promote future events and also show the quality of what they've done in the past.
Yes.
So it's, again, a wedding video would probably get shared with friends and family and things like that, and maybe some of the snippets put on social media. The corporate stuff is really around providing something that the client can use to promote themselves going forward.
That's right. It's a marketing tool for them. Whereas the wedding clients, it's more I think that's perfectly said. It's the opposite. You're really focusing on the emotion and the moments that they've experienced and trying to capture those and provide them something that they're able to look back on and experience or refill.
Absolutely.
That's how I look at it. But yeah, there's a big difference between the two, and I think there's a lot more time put into weddings. I've definitely noticed that, just in the booking, but just in the post production as well.
Yeah.
Whereas corporate is a big difference. There's one thing that really always interests me is that a lot of people get upset when I say you should charge differently for a corporate event or for an event compared to a wedding. You should charge less.
Yeah. And
I just think that's common sense. What do you think?
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think everything's got its place in the market. Weddings, I think we've already pretty much touched on it.
Yeah.
Weddings have so much more work involved in them. And that's not to say that corporate events are a walk in the park where you just walk in and take photos and leave. It's not that. But for wedding photography, there's a lot more at stake, realistically. Like, if you miss the money shot at a wedding,
yes,
you can't go back and do it the following weekend. With corporate events, you take a lot of images, you provide the client with a lot of options, and obviously the goal is to make sure that every single image is an absolute banger, but that's not always the case. People move, you're working in low light, there's a variety of different things that can and sometimes do go wrong. So you can quite easily remove one or two images from a corporate event, and nobody really notices because you've got
the first kiss, can you?
No, that's right. You've got all these other images that have still covered the event completely, but maybe one or two are off. Whereas the bride kissing the groom isn't something that you can do again. No. And if you don't have that shot, then people are going to be asking the question, where is it?
Absolutely. So there's the pressure, then there's that expectation of capturing the moment, but then as a photographer, practically, I guess, is how do you make sure you get that photo? Well, I know that I take 20 frames of every freaking moment, so I got the photo. Whereas a corporate event, I know you have a similar workflow to me where you capture the images and then you review and you filter on the job.
Yes.
So then your editing is nothing after. Whereas as a wedding, you don't have time to do that. You're freaking back to back all day. You're running around, just freaking sweating. There's, stuff happening here, stuff happening there. You need to capture it all. And then your post-production after is huge. It's enormous. And because you are shooting in many different scenarios as well, lighting situations, the editing's a lot more difficult to match it all compared to a corporate where you're using on-camera flash most of the time. Or even just a general event, like I shoot a lot of birthdays. A birthday, we just have an on-camera flash and you're done. And then there's no editing because it's all symmetrical lighting and the post-production is a quarter of what it would be for a wedding.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The requirements are very, very different. And to get back to your original point, that's why I think it is very justifiable to charge different rates for a wedding and a corporate event.
I don't know why there's an argument for it. It seems a bit silly.
I don't really know either.
I don't know.
It's like buying a Porsche and buying a Toyota.
And then
you're getting two completely different things. They don't come at the same price point.
Let me ask you another question. Do you think offering event photography as a wedding photographer devalues your wedding photography service?
Do I think offering corporate event
Let's
photography?
say so there's a big argument in like the online social media world that, you know, as a wedding photographer, you need to just be a wedding photographer to charge premium rates. If you want to charge the best rates you can't offer other services, because that will devalue your wedding photography, because people will go, oh, look, this guy's working for $250 an hour, then he shoots a wedding for $800 an hour. You know, what's going on here? He's obviously not the $800 an hour photographer because he works for $250 an hour.
Yes.
And, you know, so there's this kind of idea that you have to just offer weddings in order to be a successful high-end wedding photographer.
Look, everyone's going to have their own opinion on this, but mine personally is if I was looking to hire a wedding photographer and I found out that they did corporate events as well, I would be thinking this guy's actually got some diverse skills. It's not that and again, weddings are not easy to shoot, but if I knew that the person that I was hiring was able to capture weddings, then I would do some research into it to make sure that I could see some of their previous work and I was happy with it. But if I knew that they could do that and they could also combine that skill to be able to produce corporate event photography and whatever else it may be, to be fair, that would probably give me a little bit more confidence in that person, understanding that they have got probably a more rounded skill set than somebody who just predominantly shoots weddings, because all weddings are different, but essentially you're capturing the same sort of thing throughout most weddings, the different moments and important parts. Whereas with corporate events, there's a slightly different aspect to it as far as the professionalism and all that sort of stuff. Now, if you can tie all that together, I think you've got a really well-rounded photographer. And me personally, I wouldn't question that I was paying $1,000 an hour for my wedding and $250 an hour for my event, because again, the requirements and the workload are very, very different.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with you. I think you made some really good points there. I'm going to add an extra one, and I think it's even if you could charge an extra, let's say if you marketed your wedding photography website perfectly, and you know you were getting as many weddings as you could, and you had a really good funnel. My question would be, how much more money are you actually going to make in the end? You know, if compared to if, you know, so let's say you were stressing about getting your 50 weddings a year. Yep. And you know, because weddings are hard to book, they're seasonal. Yeah. You only get them during certain parts of the year. You don't get them year round like corporate. They're you know, we've already talked about how difficult they are to secure as a kind of how do you say it, as a kind of clientele. They're very difficult to kind of warm up and then actually book them. And I just feel like from a business point of view, it's actually sometimes not the smartest business move. And especially in a place like Perth, where Perth doesn't have a very diverse market. It's quite a small place. Yeah. And there's not many people getting married all the time. So how many, like, what's your potential market? You know, it's like, if you are just offering weddings, are you going to get enough work to be a full-time photographer? And that's my question. And I think the answer is probably no.
I would tend to agree.
Yeah.
I think maybe the top 3% of wedding photographers in Perth, and as you said, it's a small place, may have a business structure that allows them to do nothing but weddings and still have a really good income. Yep. Having said all that, it's probably taken them 10 or 15 years to get to that point. Yeah. So there's been a lot of hard work going into being able to just do the weddings. But again, I think as a photographer myself, being able to do both, you're a great example of it. You do amazing photography for weddings, and you also do really good corporate stuff. I think putting all your eggs in one basket is always a risky move. Yes. If you can, again, be a little bit more diverse and have a range of services that you can offer, it probably gives you a little bit more confidence or a little bit more comfort that throughout the year, even when it's not wedding season in Perth, that the corporate gigs are there to
Yep.
keep your income, going, and be able to support your business.
Absolutely. That's how I view it as well. And that's something that I identified on very early on, because everyone online, any wedding photography course you take, they always say, specialize in weddings, don't do anything else.
Yeah.
And I just think that's the worst advice you can give a wedding photographer.
Yeah.
Because
I agree.
because you're going to end up being a part-time wedding photographer, and then yes, the couple might perceive you as a better purchase because all you showcase is weddings online, but in a way you're lying to the couple. You're presenting yourself as a photographer who does this year in, year out, and realistically you only do it part-time. You have another job on the side, and that needs to be called out a little bit more, because I know if I just took my weddings, and even if I got to a high level of wedding photography, there's no way I would make I'd probably make enough to have a full-time job, but I would definitely not be as lucrative if I was offering a couple of different core services. And yes, you don't want to spread too much and be, I don't know, like let's say you have a website and you don't want to be offering wedding photography and then DJ MC or something like that, be too diverse as a business. You want to have a kind of core specialization, but I think people get a little bit lost in how specialized that should be.
Yes.
And there's certain cities where absolutely, like London, New York, you could be a full-time wedding photographer with a race, stuff like that. But you have to think about what your market is and how many people you're actually able to sell to. And
absolutely.
I think that's where a lot of people
and
go
then
wrong.
to break that down a little bit further, different people have different budgets for wedding photography. So they may really, really want you as a photographer.
Yeah.
But your rates just don't fit their budget.
Yeah.
So then it comes down to, well, do you want to start cutting some bits out? Do you want to start?
Yeah.
Now, whether they value the photography, like the quality of the photography and the quality of the videography more than the volume of it that they get for that one particular day is an argument that probably everyone has a different point of view on. But yeah, I don't believe that it does you any harm at all to shoot more than one kind of event.
Yeah.
Whether it's corporate and birthday parties or corporate and weddings or weddings and birthday parties. I guess if you look at it, weddings and birthday parties are probably closer than what weddings and corporate events are.
Yep.
But I don't know anybody who charges, $1,000 or $1,500 an hour to shoot a birthday party. Yet those two are still quite closely related.
They're quite closely related. In the
so
in the
at the end of the
aesthetic,
day, the value of what you're doing really comes down to the customer, A, what they want to get out of it, and B, what their budget is, I guess.
Yeah, and also what you're providing as a service. And I think that's the other take is you have to somehow communicate to your clients that weddings are more work than a birthday. They are more work.
Yep.
And I communicate that, and us, the easiest way you say is, well, your wedding photo is going to take, let's say, 6 to 8 weeks to finish.
Yep.
Your birthday photo is going to be out in 2 days.
Yeah.
There's a big difference. It's
Absolutely.
a huge difference.
For sure.
And it's just that post-production alone. It's not only the post-production, it's the expertise of knowing a wedding timeline, because that takes a long time to really grasp, and to be able to provide professional insight as a photographer into what's going to actually work. Yeah. That's a skill in itself. And
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I think if you asked most people, like, if you had the option of looking really, really good at a corporate event or on your wedding day, which would you choose? That probably tells you what the answer is. People are always going to value that really personal, looking their best on their wedding day.
Yep.
Everybody wants to look good at a corporate event, but I'm pretty confident that if you ask most people, that their preference would be that they look amazing on their wedding day and look good at a conference.
Absolutely. I agree. I think there's more time spent in producing the wedding images. The client wants you to spend more time on it. They want a higher quality product, because it is a once in a lifetime moment. It's not happening 3 times a year.
That's right.
It's a once in a lifetime moment, and they do expect more. And I do get a bit frustrated with clients sometimes, because and I'm sure you do as well. Maybe this is why you've kind of shifted into corporate over time and strayed away from weddings. Is that I'm just going to say it. It's like a lot of wedding clients don't really appreciate how much time wedding photographers actually put into getting their images to where they are. Yep. And we're corporate photographers, and when we shoot corporate event, the hourly rate's fantastic. Yep. The hourly rate's fantastic because we're efficient at the editing process. And we briefly touched on it before. You can't do that for a wedding. You cannot.
There's no shortcuts in weddings.
There's no such thing as an easy wedding, and couples don't seem to get that, and they don't seem to see the value and the difference, and they kind of go, the classic things is, oh, don't say it's a wedding because then they will charge you more.
Yes.
And it's, oh, do you want me to provide you a birthday photography experience? And I've had that happen a couple of times because I do offer both services, where they've booked in as a birthday and it's been a wedding, and we've provided the birthday photography service, and they've been so unhappy and it's come back on me and bit me in the bum. And I'm like, I had no idea it was a wedding. It's like,
I've been tricked into it a couple of times as well. I've had people calling me, telling me that they're holding an event. And when I ask, what kind of event is it? Oh, it's just like a social kind of event. And I'm like, okay. And it turns out that it's a wedding, or it's a surprise wedding.
Don't do that if you're a wedding couple.
No,
it is the worst thing to do. Cause
no one's going to be happy.
Because we position ourselves in a different mindset as well. We might take more jobs that week, for instance, and we might not have the time to put in the post-production required to get your wedding photos out in time. Just for an example, like, there's so much more that goes into doing a wedding photography. I'm assuming when you practiced wedding photography full time for the 4 years, planning was a big part of your process in, client liaison and planning with them. Same with me, because it's so important to know what's going to happen on the day. And like, you don't need to do that for a corporate event or a birthday. You just get the schedule and you're done.
If you rock up to a corporate event the day before, there's nothing set up. It's an empty room.
Yep, that's right.
With weddings, I would be having a client meeting, and then we'd be working out, okay, what time is the ceremony at, for example, and we'd be going to the location so that I could see what the lighting would be like, and we could do a pre-shoot and all that sort of stuff, go through it prior to the wedding, make sure that they're happy with what, the photos that are being produced, and see if there's anything else that they had in mind that maybe we hadn't covered off or didn't have time to. Then you've got the day itself, and on and on and on it goes. Exactly as you said with the corporate event, you get a brief, you rock up, you've got a pretty good idea of what's happening at what particular time, and you make sure you cover that, give the client lots of options, they're happy.
Agree.
I've never had one corporate event where I've had somebody come back to me personally saying, oh, I don't like the way I look in this photo, or can you make me look a bit more this or a bit more that? Corporate events are very documentary type style. Whereas, like you said before, weddings are a lot more creative. And that's where a lot of your time goes. Just making sure that creative side really comes out, rather than everything looking just nice and sharp and colours being right.
Colours right, symmetrical lighting. I actually think if I really broke it down, I actually reckon that wedding photography pays a lower hourly rate than corporate. But you get bigger paying jobs, and that's the thing is you get a big payday, but you're going to get a lower hourly rate. Where corporate, you're going to get a smaller kind of invoice or total pay, but you're going to get a higher hourly rate. I think that's kind of how I look at it. The reason why I do weddings is because I love producing those artistic images. I have a photography degree, and I was an artist in my degree. All I did was produce creative images, and I have that creative itch. And weddings kind of allow you to explore that and experiment with it, and to have that creative freedom. I do a lot of off-camera flash, and creative lighting, and dramatic lighting, and all this kind of stuff. But that's not really appreciated in the corporate space, because the corporate space is all very similar lighing. And I found I kind of got a little bit stale at some point in the corporate space, just doing events. I hadn't started doing the commercial at that point. And that's why I'm going to start doing the weddings, because, I really want to push that creative side and have more creativity in what I do.
And going back to one of the earlier points about, around corporate versus weddings, and why is one priced at more than the other, and so on and so forth. The skills that you take to each one are essentially the same as far as clicking the button on the camera goes. But from a photographer's point of view as well, like they say, variety is the spice of life. And one of the things that I found when I was doing weddings all the time was that I had an urge to do something different. I had an inclination where I love doing the weddings, but I also wanted to do something different.
Yes, there you go.
And so I feel like, to a degree,
so it can happen at weddings as well. You can get stale in the wedding photography.
I almost kind of burnt out, because it was like another wedding, another wedding, another wedding, another wedding. Whereas I feel like if I had combined the corporate and the wedding side of things, there probably would have been more longevity for me in there.
Yep,
So
that's a
yeah,
great
again,
point.
I don't think it's a bad thing
I don't think it's
to
a bad
shoot
thing
more
as
than
well.
one kind of event, whether it be like you said, birthday parties, corporate weddings, whatever it might be. It keeps you, it revitalizes you when you shoot
Yep.
something that you haven't done for a while.
Agree.
And I think that's really important to keep your creativity and your motivation flowing.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I completely agree with that. I can see that as well. I can see that happening to me with wedding photography. Absolutely, you know, where you just start producing the same images over and over. Like, you know, UWA is a very common place I shoot.
Yep.
And I've just done the same photo there freaking the last 6 weddings because they see me selling it at the expo and then they go, oh, let's reproduce
We want that. Yeah.
I've just done it 6 times now. It does get a bit stale, you know. I mean, you know, I do a little bit things different here and there, but if you're doing 40 or 50 of those a year, which, you know, that's a lot of repetition. You know, you can't get stale in that as well. It's not you know, it's not entirely creative. You do end up hitting that kind of roadblock, I think, as a wedding photographer as well. So yeah, you're definitely not immune to it.
Yeah.
I really value that diversity. I think the biggest thing that really projected my business forward was having videography as part of it.
Yep.
And offering that second service and having kind of a second discipline that you're learning and that you're offering, and kind of broadening your horizons. So the way I look at it and is if you imagine like a horizontal line, and then, you know, you have all your different services. You might have wedding photography, corporate photography, event photography, whatever else might be along there. And then you kind of have a vertical line. And the more time you put into one, the better you're going to get, and the higher your skill level is going to be. And yes, you could entirely devote your time into just doing wedding photography and specialize and become an expert in just that wedding photography. But you have to ask yourself, is who's going to pay those rates that's going to sustain your, you know, because you're going to get 30 weddings a year with that really niche defined style.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I think the smarter business choice is to actually go, well, maybe we're not going to get to that expertise, but we're going to come just below it.
Yeah.
But we're going to expand this way, and we're going to start offering a few different things, and we're going to do every single one to a very, very high degree.
Yep.
But we don't need to be the absolute best in you know, just the one. And we can be. Yeah. So that's how I've been thinking about it, at least.
Yeah.
And
I agree. I think being able to offer that variety is it's a win-win for clients and the photographer or videographer.
Yes.
You're much more clever than I am. I can't do video at all. But I do offer it as part of what I do as a photographer.
Yes.
Because as you said, it's a value add for clients. If you can provide almost like a total media solution through one point of contact, clients find that to be really, really valuable. Mm-hmm. So I do offer the videography as part of my packages when people require it. I can't do it myself, but from another point of view, you mentioned that, you know, wedding rates are much higher than corporate rates, which they are. But if you've got a balance of both of those, then you're not having to rely on the 50 weddings a year or the 30 weddings a year or whatever the case may be. And
burn out to that.
Yeah.
And my goal's always been work year round. I want to do this full time. I don't want to you know, dabble. And truthfully, the people I know, the people who are doing the best, they're corporate photographers. The people who are doing it full time, they have that corporate back in.
Yeah.
And they might do other things, but they have corporate back. And I think my goal ultimately in the end with wedding photography is to just take the big jobs. You know, I just take the 6 to 10K thousand jobs, photo and video, full day coverage, and do 20 of those a year. Yep. And then you don't, because you have your other industry, and there's really good ways to structure your business. I think where I think I'm just gonna say I think like people online who are saying you just need to you just need to specialize in weddings, or you just need to specialize in corporate. Pick one thing, just go down. I think that's bad advice, and I think they're forgetting the fact that they're doing other things as well. That they're teaching photography, for instance. They're selling a different service as well. So so not even them have niched and specialized in one thing, which is the irony of it, isn't it? And,
correct.
Yeah, and then so I think it's bad advice, and any business owner would think the same thing. Like the way businesses are structured. So you think about like who owns Coca-Cola?
Who owns Coca-Cola?
Yeah. What's the umbrella company? Forget. might be Coca-Cola actually.
I think it is Coca-Cola.
Yeah,
There's like
yeah.
4 main companies in the world that own everything.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure
I have another
Coca-Cola
example.
Amatil is one of them.
Think about you know Tara Cash, Connor and YD.
Yep.
All owned by the same company.
Yep.
But they have 3 different companies targeting different economics, demographics.
Yes.
You know, so you have YD, which is your high end, Tara Cash, which is your mid range, and then what's the low range? Connor. It's your low range.
Yep.
And it's the same business, but they've just worked out that if you market each one differently, you're going to capture all 3 demographics.
Yeah.
Your high end, your mid range, and your low range. You do the same thing as a wedding photographer, commercial photographer. Just have 2 different brands. You know what I mean? And you can market them really specific, but you shouldn't be advising people. I think the better advice to give is your goal should be to have a very clear message in your marketing, right? Because then you can be very direct in how you present yourself. But it shouldn't be just do one thing. It should be maybe have different labels, you know?
Yeah. Like
the Coca-Cola, Sprite, Fanta, you know, the very specific marketing messages. So you know what you're buying is very consistent.
Yep.
And that's how I've been thinking about it at least. And
yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
I just get a bit upset with people online saying, you know, I just disagree with it. Because
Well, I mean, I would like to know how many people who are online are actually questioning this that are actually photographers or videographers.
We've had 30 people jump in. I don't know if anyone's live at the moment. If you're live, ask us a question.
Yeah. But people may have that opinion from a consumer point of view, but as a provider point of view, it's probably very, very different. And as you said, most companies have multiple brands that cover multiple requirements.
That's right.
And that's so that they can service a much larger market than
so they can
just
stay
providing
in business.
Correct, yeah.
You have to do it.
It's, again, not putting all your eggs in one basket, but next year Coke might be, you know, the devil's drink. And everybody might be drinking Sprite. Well, Coca-Cola company aren't going to lose anything out of that.
And weddings are a massive decline at the moment. Huge decline. The general consumer doesn't have much money at the moment. Everyone's tight. I'm tight. You're probably tight. You tight? Be honest.
I'm not getting married, so I'm not too bad. But I've got 2 kids, so yeah, I am.
Just taking it.
I think
what I'm trying to joke about is I think the general consumer is really struggling at the moment. Like if you look at like general private sector, not business sector.
Yep.
And I'm saying this because of who I'm selling to is private sector. I think people are really tight because of inflation.
Yep.
Because salaries haven't got. I was just talking to Morgan before about it. You know, when we first got our first rental, 6 years ago, when we first got together, we paid $320 a week for a house.
Yep.
2 years ago, when we came back from Europe, we made the decision as adults to live with my mum and dad because we did not believe we could save up for a house and afford rent. Because that's how it jumped. Like to get the same property, it was like $800 a week. Yeah, it had over doubled in the span of us being together. Yeah, and not only that, but it was everything else had gone up in cost, and it was like I was being suffered. My salaries haven't gone up that much, you know. And I guess, you know, as I think maybe I probably feel this more than probably yourself because, you know, I'm a young person trying to purchase my first home. It's fucking expensive, man. You know, like it's insane. It's insane. Like I'm doing the numbers and stuff. I'm just like,
Well, to give you some idea, I built the first house that I built was in the year 2000. It cost me like 179 grand for house and land.
700 and
179,000 for house and land. That was on an 800 square meter block, 4x2 with high ceilings and all sorts.
It's insane.
Sold it 2 years ago for 760. So for me to
seven
purchase,
times in value.
Yeah.
That's
so
insane.
for me to purchase so I'm the same as you. My salary hasn't gone up 7 times in that period. But yeah, for me to purchase that house at the time, it was a stretch. But I really felt, and it sounds weird, but I really felt for the person who bought it from me because I was like, this must really be challenging.
Yeah.
And to that point, I'm now 50 years old and I've never been at a point in my life where I've seen so many adults living with their parents to be able to afford to save for a deposit for a house.
All my friends were doing it.
Yep.
That's why we made the decision to do it as well.
Yeah,
It was
100%.
like, it was crazy.
People are doing registry office weddings with a party afterwards rather than a big wedding.
Yep.
The cost of living is definitely having a massive impact on people. The
Huge.
luxuries that used to be almost just taken for granted aren't seen that way anymore. They are really luxury.
They are.
And people now, especially I think younger people, are noticing that, and so they're choosing to spend their money elsewhere. They're choosing to spend it on experiences rather than bricks and mortar, because you know, you can go to Bali and you can spend $3,000 for 10 days and live like a king.
Yeah.
That $3,000 probably wouldn't even cover a fortnight's mortgage in most houses now.
But also weddings. They'll also rather spend their money on other things other than wedding.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening, I think, in the industry.
Yep.
And that's why a lot of wedding photographers are probably they are struggling.
Yeah.
The industry is in shambles. I've noticed it. Like,
it's got to be difficult.
It's tough. I'm lucky because I have that back end. I have a clientele in a different sector, but I just could not imagine just doing weddings at the moment.
Yeah.
Like just trying to sell to people who are tight and, you know, who are in that range of 20 to 30.
Yeah.
And, you know, are purchasing their first home, or they are, you know, saving up money. Like, you know, like you can't. It's like, how are you going to drop $5,000 to $10,000 on a photo and video package?
Yeah.
You know, like you're not. You just is like.
Yep. Absolutely.
But once upon a time, that was probably, you know, considered
pretty standard,
reasonable. Yeah. But I think nowadays it's probably, you know, out of the reach of most people.
It also creates a bit of industry turmoil as well, because all right, so you're a wedding photographer, your going rate's been, let's say, $8,000 to do a full day, and the opportunities to charge that are reducing over time.
Yep.
So what do? Do you start dropping your rates so that you can start to increase the number of weddings that you're actually winning, you know, where you're winning the jobs? And then how does that affect your overall yearly performance, whether it's time spent or income or whatever? You know, if suddenly you've had to drop from $8,000 a wedding down to $6,000 a wedding just to win the job, and you're getting less weddings per year, it can become a pretty dangerous cycle.
I think so. And that's what I'm seeing at the moment. You know, networking with a lot of people who are in weddings, and it's really sad because, you know, people built their whole careers in it, and it's come down a lot.
Yeah.
And it is a really difficult thing. But I don't think the corporate space is, let's say, immune.
Oh, it's definitely not.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, definitely not.
And I think we would be a little naive to think if it was, you know, if we would just be, because businesses go through struggle periods as well. I think businesses are doing quite well at the moment from what I could see and what my clients are willing to book. But that's, you know, it's not going to, that could change.
Yeah. Look, when you talk, you know, the enterprise end of things, and you're talking about your BHPs and Rios and Woodsides of the world, I don't know, you know, whether they're feeling it as much or not, it's debatable.
They'll probably just look at their books and go, oh, yeah, we can go without this year.
Dropped $4 billion this year. We're going to have to do something about that.
Yeah, that's true. You are selling to a entirely different kind of.
Well, having said that, you've then got your small businesses, and, you know, their rents have gone up and their personal cost of living has gone up and all that sort of stuff. So I've noticed, and again, it depends on the strategy of the business, but I've noticed over the last probably 2 to 3 years mainly that the number of small businesses who are prepared to, you know, fork out for a professional photo shoot and professional video and all that sort of stuff to promote their business, it has reduced, but I can see that there's a lot more thought that goes into it from business owners now around, can we afford to do this? What's our return on investment going to be? Rather than, just spend it, we'll claim it back on tax, it'll be fine. Yeah. So it is. I think at the smaller business end of the market,
absolutely,
it's definitely having an impact.
Yep.
Again, at the larger end,
your
BHPs
right
and
there.
banks and Rios and stuff never really seem to balk too much at a few $100 one way or another.
They're probably not. And that is true. You have to remember who you're selling to. And then you get those big corporate, the Fortune 500 companies. I'm lucky enough to work with Fortune 500 companies from time to time.
Yep.
I don't think they're so worried about rates
Yeah.
too much. And yeah, you know, they're going to assess the quote. They're going to have, but if you, I think, like, I don't know about you, but I'm very careful with how I word myself and how I present myself on email. You know, I try and
Yeah.
portray the value because I am aware that I'm charging more than the average corporate event photographer.
Yep.
But I try and explain in my email, that initial email, which is what everything's based on in corporate. So they'll visit your website, they'll see if you've worked with other big names usually.
Yes.
So if you have the big names on your website, then they'll contact you. They'll get your quote, and then I think in that initial email, they're going to decide, you know, more or less if they're going to book you just based on what you've written in that email.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to kind of.
It's generally that little attachment at the bottom with the numbers on it.
Yeah.
That has a lot to do with whether they decide to go ahead or not. Because if they're experienced at hiring photographers and videographers, generally they'll be looking for value for money.
Yes.
So they're happy to pay an extra $1,000 not to have it done again 6 weeks later because they can't use any of the footage or photos.
Yeah.
When you're talking about people who have never done it before and think, photography's photography, guy comes, takes pictures and that's it, then it's a lot more of a numbers kind of decision than a value for money or is this going to represent the value of our business kind of scenario. But I guess it's being able to understand each client and what's important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And to be fair, one of the things that I do more often than not is I'll receive the email, I'll respond with a very brief kind of email saying, thank you very much for your inquiry. We'd be more than happy to accommodate your request. However, I'd really appreciate 5 to 10 minutes on the phone.
Yes.
Just to understand what is important to you and what the outcomes are that you're seeking, possibly discuss budgets, whatever the case may be.
So you mentioned negotiation before.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned negotiation before. So negotiation's a pretty integral part to how you price yourself.
Can be, yes.
Yeah,
I'm comfortable with negotiating.
Right.
I may have...
How do you negotiate? Like, because I don't negotiate very much. I'm not very good at negotiating. So what would your advice be to enter a negotiation?
Understand what the client's needs are, and in some cases what you've proposed may be over-servicing.
Okay.
So there may be some opportunity for cost reduction.
Mm-hmm.
I don't reduce cost very often, to be fair.
Okay.
What I will more often than not do is provide something else that's of value to them at little, sometimes no cost.
Okay.
But more often I can enhance what I'm providing. Sometimes there will be an increase in cost and they think, well, that's justifiable because this is really important to me. So I think a lot of people, when they think about negotiation, it's about, they're going to start pushing the price down. For me, a negotiation is an open platform. It's 50-50. So the price might go down, the price might go up. What you actually get may decrease, what you get may increase.
Right.
But it's about finding a point that both parties are happy with.
Yeah, right.
And taking it from there. Every client is not made for every supplier.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something to keep in mind. I don't get offended when people say, look, at the end of the day, it just doesn't meet our budget or whatever the case may be. But negotiations don't scare me. And to be fair, when I do engage in negotiations, a lot of the time I actually come out with a higher invoice for the client than what I did before we went into
that's brilliant. Yeah.
So I don't find them scary. I don't find it like negotiation is like we're going to start driving price down.
Do you use that word negotiation?
No, not with clients.
No, okay. Yeah.
Absolutely not.
So what do you say to get them on the phone?
What do I say to get them on the phone?
Yeah.
I feel that there are options that I maybe provide that haven't been included in the brief or the information that you've provided. I'd really just like to spend a little bit of time with you to understand what at the core of this is important to you and what you're hoping to get out of it. Is this something that you're looking more at doing multiple times a year, or is this a one-off?
Right.
So there's it really, I take it on a job by job scenario.
Yeah. Okay.
I find that most clients are pretty happy to jump on the phone, and as long as you're not going to take up half their day talking about stuff that they don't need. So you don't want it to be a marketing call.
No.
Where it's just like flog. It's not that's not the intended purpose. The intended purpose is for them to understand that you really want to get a good idea of what their requirements are, and then provide the best value for money.
Yes.
To achieve that at a really good level, either at or above where they thought it was going to be.
Yeah, there you go. That's a really good strategy. I always try to get my clients on the phone as well. I think getting that phone call is so important. If you can get them on the phone and then ascertain the budget and then go from there, that's my strategy. I always try and work out how much are they willing to spend.
Yeah.
I don't lower rates as well. I guess in your way, then I do negotiate. I like one thing I do is if let's say they say we have a 2-day event and our budget is $3,000 max, and I'll go, wow, let's do post production on the day then, and we're just going to reduce how many photos you get, but I'm not doing post production after, because I'm not spending the time lowering my daily rate. Because I don't think that's necessarily good for me as a creative who's trying to price himself in a certain way, and then I try and I guess explore, and what you're doing as well is explore ways you can cater your service to meet the budget, and to provide a service that will be valuable to them and that they're willing to pay for as well. Yeah, and in turn you're sometimes getting higher kind of.
Closes, I call it a discovery call. It's not a negotiation call or a first meeting. It's a discovery call. Yeah. And I place a lot of it as well around, are we a good fit for each other? Sometimes we are, sometimes we're not. And I've had opportunities where the client's going, this is going to work really well, but for me something hasn't been right. And I sort of have been honest and said, look, maybe we're just not the right fit. Maybe I'm not the right service provider for you, or maybe you're not the right client for me. And I find that that's when a lot of the time you actually find out what they are prepared to pay and whether the value that you can add is within their budget or not. Yeah. Although we're trying to seek work from these people, if they don't want to work with us or if they can't for whatever reason, it's not the be all and end all. And I think sometimes being in control of that situation is not a bad thing, because they then go, oh, hang on, this isn't, Bob Smith from down the road. I'm actually dealing with somebody who knows what they're doing here, and they're prepared to let a client walk because it doesn't work for them, or they feel like the client's not going to get what they need out of it or what they want out of it. And it puts things into perspective from a client end to go, oh shit, this guy's not just going to, be beaten down in price and still do the job for me. Potentially I could lose this guy, even though I really want to use him, over $500. Yep. Is it worth me doing that? No. Yeah. So it works both ways. If you respect yourself in that way, the client's going to respect you more, right? Absolutely. And so being honest with them. You don't need to be, it doesn't need to be a personal thing, but being honest with them and working with them rather than for them is a huge thing. It's a massive value. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you need to work with them. I agree. I think that that's a really great way, and I think that type of communication is so integral to having a successful business. I think you need to be able to jump on the phone with the client and talk to them about rates. Yeah, and openly discuss rates. Yeah, and do it in a confident way and a respectful way. Yeah, and also respect yourself, and don't be a pushover, because if you are that pushover and you are just kind of going to go, yeah, all right, we'll do it for $500, we'll do it for $200. Yep. You're not going to be in business very long. Yeah. No, that's right. Yeah. That's right. And I watch a lot of this stuff on social media as well. And a lot of the guys that I'm looking at the moment are talking about, well, what's the true value of something, If I do a shoot for you and it takes me, let's say, 6 hours, but I can actually do that shoot within 1 hour, what's more valuable? So would you rather spend 6 hours? Should the service cost less because you can do it faster? Well, this is what hourly. Are you charging an hourly rate, or are you charging for the final product? For a project, yeah. Mm-hmm. And this is something that I'm starting to look into really heavily, because... Well, it depends on what job you're doing, I think. So if you're doing an event, you can't really have that negotiation, I think. Yep. Because events aren't perceived that way from the client. Events are not valued as much as per se commercial website images. Yep. For instance, the client doesn't care how long those commercial images for their website take. If they look good, if they look amazing, they're happy to have them. They're happy to pay for them. They don't care if it takes an hour or 2 hours. But all of a sudden, if you start to dabble into the event space, which is more
calculate it based on time and hours, then yeah, I find it really hard to use that value-based selling.
Yeah. I find corporate headshots is a really good one
Corporate headshots
for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you're doing like one corporate headshot, who cares if it takes 10 minutes or it takes half an hour? It really doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing 80 corporate headshots for one client, do you think that they would prefer to have 80 people off the floor for half an hour each, or 80 people off the floor for 10 minutes each?
Yeah.
Now, if I'm charging an hourly rate and I'm taking 10 minutes per person rather than half an hour per person,
well, that's what you charge per person.
I'm kind
right?
of shooting myself in the foot. Well, again, yeah, you could charge per person, or you could do it at an overall project cost, because why should being efficient cost you in the end?
No, I don't think it should.
And that's the way that a lot of photographers and videographers structure their business. It's all on an hourly rate. So the longer you take to do it,
the more you get paid.
Yeah. But is it really of any higher value to the client?
No, it's absolutely not.
So.
What you're talking about, it's the Future talks about it a lot.
Yep.
What's his name? Alex Doyle or something. He's brilliant. Value-based selling, and I agree with it a lot, and I think it has its place, especially in that commercial world where you are trying to produce something for the client that's going to bring them value. But I think things like headshots, absolutely, they bring the client value, and things like marketing material, like taking a really nice photo of a bottle so the client can see out the bottle and make money.
Yep.
That brings them value. But it's kind of positioning yourself in that way that you're able to sell in that manner.
Yeah.
Because it's not an easy thing to do, especially when you have I sell based on the hourly rate for events. It's how do I transition now into that value-based selling for my commercial work? I'm starting to do it. I'm actually going to start a new entity, a new business, because I think that's going to give me more leverage in being able to do it. And I'm not only going to start selling, have that value-based selling perspective, but I'm going to start doing things like commercial licenses.
Yeah.
I think that's another really big one that I think more people need to begin to introduce as subscriptions become more prevalent in our industry. I added up my expenses last year. I spent like $90,000. What the?
It gets ridiculous, doesn't it?
Man.
It's out of control.
Out of control. Like, yes, there's cost for editors, there's cost for shooters, there's cost for, but the subscriptions, Adobe, Dropbox, whatever other backup software you're using,
then your payment gateways. So if somebody books through the website, you've got Stripe. If they want to pay on the spot, you've got Square. It goes on and on and on.
It goes on and on and on. And your expenses are huge. But the thing that really got me and why I started saying I need to charge a commercial license was for videography. Because in videography, you often use things like music or visual assets that you will pull off something like Motion Array.
Yeah.
And as soon as you stop subscribing to Motion Array, you lose your license to use that. So then your client will be in breach if they continue to use your video on their website.
Yes.
So I saw it in a way that it's my liability as a creative to charge a commercial license so I can continue to subscribe to whatever the client has in their video, so then they can continue to use it.
Yeah.
And that's how I word it. And so it's like, we're producing images for you. There's going to be a bit of less of a kind of restriction on the commercial license, but for video production, man, I go all out. I'm like, you guys need to pay a fee every 2 years because I'm not going to continue subscribing, and I'm not going to continue to back up your footage unless I'm getting some kind of money for that. Because my freaking NAS that I'm about, it was like a $2,500 investment, man. It's crazy. It's crazy, And not only that, then you need to back it all up, and you need to maintain the hard drives. You need to also have probably an online cloud storage to back it up to if you want to. I don't do that, but I know a lot of people do that as well. I think RAID backup's enough, but there's just all these different things, right?
Yeah.
And you need to have some money coming in to be able to offer it. And
absolutely. It's people question sometimes, why is it so expensive for you just to come and take a photo? Well, it's not expensive for me to come and take the photo if you're happy for me to rock up and do it on my phone and leave within 3 minutes. But if you want to use equipment that I've spent thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars on, and the 15 or 20 years that I've learnt that I've used...
How much do you reckon's in this room?
Oh, I'd be scared.
Probably about 30, 40K.
At least.
Yeah.
At
there
least.
You go.
It adds up so quickly.
Adds up, yeah.
But... Yeah, you're not paying for somebody to come and take a photo.
No.
You're paying for the years of experience that they've spent learning how to do it properly and how to do it to a point where they've actually attracted you as a client to go, shit, this guy does really good work. I want him to do my headshot.
Yep.
Or I want him to shoot my event.
Yep.
The gear that you buy and, even the spaces that we rent out to be able to do the photography and the licenses that we need to be able to use certain equipment, or like you just said, songs and things like that. It all comes at a cost. None of this is free.
Absolutely not. And as we are moving into this world of subscriptions, I think that's the extra layer that a lot of people need to start charging. I know that I'm going to start doing that for sure, because
I find people that do it like you're doing it properly, I would hold a much higher value on than somebody who goes, all right, here's chasing cars to use on your wedding video. Don't worry about any of the licensing. It'll all be fine.
No.
Now, for a personal video, that's probably fine. But when you're looking at commercial and corporate kind of stuff,
something on your website, they can get in trouble.
Yeah, big time.
What if all of a sudden I did change? I go, I don't want to use Motion anymore. I want to use Motion VFX.
Yep.
It's one letter different, but I'm going to change platform. All of a sudden, all your licenses are done.
Yep.
And I'm looking at, I have a terabyte of footage. I'm not, that's like, it's silly. And like the client, but corporate clients, I think are beginning to understand it. And when I explain it to them, they do understand very well. And I think it's a bit hard to leverage that in photography only, though, because
it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah, it's a lot more difficult. Yeah, but definitely for video production, you can. So if you're a videographer, charge a commercial license.
Yeah,
more of the story. You really gotta.
Yeah,
but
photography, you're going to do the job properly.
You're going to do the job properly. You're going to back up the footage, and you're going to have the licenses continue to subscribe to. It's only fair, because you need to continue to subscribe to this platform. Yeah, you can think of it maybe, I'm going to get more clients, it's going to pay for it off itself. But what if you don't?
Yeah.
What if you don't? What if you go out of business? Are you going to put your ex-clients into liability and you're going to get them in trouble because they're not paying their ongoing fee? You shouldn't. You should be transparent. You should be upfront. You should tell them what you do have to subscribe to, and they cost us to get passed on.
It's just removing any vulnerability. It's any case for liability or anything like that, or copyright or whatever it might be. If you're going to be professional about things, do it professionally. Stick by the right rules and make sure that you're not putting your clients and yourself at risk. It's just not worth it to save a couple of bucks.
No, absolutely not. One thing that I came to realize with that as well was my first few years of business, when I was part-time, I was always trying to cut cost. And I was always looking at what software is the cheapest, what software is the most affordable. And then around 2 years ago, when I went full-time more or less, I realized that that's not the right approach to take. You need to just pay for the good shit. You just have to, because like the mistake I've made now is I'm using a software that doesn't, for accounting, that doesn't have the, as my business has grown, it doesn't have the interface or the tools that I need to do things like payroll and to do things like manage projects and then calculate how much I'm going to profit from each project. So I have to do that all myself because my software isn't sophisticated enough. But if I just began to use that software to start, but now I'm stuck because I'm in this accounting software and I can't transfer my documents across. And it's going to cost me even more just to move to the new software, or I'm going to have to start all my accounts fresh. And, it's going to be a pain in the ass as well, because, I have like $100,000 in invoices just sitting there for the next year and a half. I'm going to be using two accounts. It's going to be a nightmare,
My advice would be bite the bullet and do it.
But
because you're going to have to sooner or later. And the longer you take,
I know,
the more the snowball's going to grow.
Putting it off. It's brutal. Should we have another whiskey? You can try some of my whiskey.
Why not?
If you are watching the podcast, please ask us questions. We're more than willing to answer questions so we can maintain the viewership. I see we've had 60 people come in. I think we only have one concurrent viewer. So everyone's left. They're bored of us. Tell us if you're bored of us and we'll, ask questions, do anything. Let us know how you're feeling. There's a comment section here that I can see. Just fucking ask the question.
Yeah. Right. What can we do for you? What do you want to know?
That's the negotiation tactic. We've had a lot of people come in though.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of people kind of in and out.
You still rolling, or have you?
Yeah, no, we're still.
Yeah, still rolling.
David Broadway's in. Midday drinks. Hello, Broadway. Hello. The man himself.
12:13.
There we are. Yeah. I know we've been going a while. We'll just power through another half an hour.
Yeah.
And another 20 minutes. Got a few more questions I've got to ask you.
All
It goes
good.
quick, doesn't it?
It does.
I know.
It's like just sitting here having
It's
a
just sitting here having
conversation.
a conversation.
And I mean, Christ, we do this for hours sometimes. So
Yeah.
an hour and a half isn't a huge ask when it comes to talking about what you enjoy doing.
That's right. So cheers to David Broadway. David Broadway is a renowned photographer, renowned corporate photographer. We shall drink to him. We're drinking the $200 bottle of whiskey for you, David, out of the $100,000 flask. I don't have any ice, but should do. There you go.
That's all right.
Ask us a question, guys. We have two concurrent viewers now. We've had a lot of people jump in, a lot of people leave. Please tell us if you're bored. Please ask us questions. Let's keep the conversations going. We've dived into a lot today. I think we've actually probably answered a lot of questions for a lot of up-and-coming photographers. We've also critiqued the idea, the notion that you should only do one thing. You like it?
Yeah.
It's good.
I do.
He likes
Very
it.
smoky, beautiful.
Yeah, I like the smoky stuff. Lafroig I also really like, but this kind of whiskey is my favourite. So, no questions coming through. David Broadway has a mental blank. He's going to get around as he keeps out.
It's a first.
Yep. He's jealous. How good is this podcast? Look and sound. Sounds milky. Sounds good. I can hear it. You can't,
I can't hear
it.
it.
Yeah.
I just have to take your word for it.
And these are $5 earbuds, and it sounds bloody good. All right, so running a business is covered. Where do you see technology going? So you've obviously I started professional. So I use DSLRs. I've used film. But as a professional photographer, getting paid, doing my full-time job, I really started in 2018, which is when the EOS R came out for Canon, which is the mirrorless Canon version. I never had the 5Ds and stuff, and I guess Nikon would have been the D700s, the D780s, D750s, or whatever they were
Back then.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
The D850, which was the last DSLR that I used, came out in 2017 or 2018, somewhere around there.
There you go.
And then Nikon were a little bit slower than some of the other camera companies.
We got Bell Cal Photo in here as well. Bell and Cal.
Bell and Cal.
Yeah,
Hello,
Isabel.
Bell and Cal.
Hello, Isabel. Hello, Isabel. How are you guys? And Callan? David says, I'm on the big jobs. Checking in, but got to go back to shooting. Of course you are, mate. You're just having some sushi in your back.
Talking Raoul.
Yeah. Funny. Ask us questions, guys. Keep the questions coming. Don't just ramble nonsense in the you can ramble. We're rambling nonsense as well. But yeah, cheers.
Cheers.
I think we should really dive into that technology part for the last 20 minutes of the show because, yeah, you've seen a lot of change in the photography industry in terms of the technology and where it's come, and you've used professionally DSLRs. I've never used DSLRs professionally. Oh, maybe I have, but not really. Like, being a full-time photographer, I had the EOS Rs. Those were my first cameras. They're mirrorless. They're good. They have good focusing system. I can see the exposure in the viewfinder. But I always appreciate and really value how difficult it would have been for those bloody film guys, man. How?
Yeah, well, I started on film.
There you go.
Not professionally, but I started the first several cameras that I used.
What's up, El? Ask us a question, mate. Talking about where photography is going, what the technology is going to do.
The first several cameras that I used were film cameras. And no one knew anything better back then, but looking back on it and paying for exposure for a 24 or 36 roll of film and then finding out that 80% of it's blurry and dark
Shit.
was a challenge. So as a professional, that must have been really, really difficult.
Yeah.
And I think that's why a lot of the guys that we see now who started off using film and things like that back in the day and are now using mirrorless, the results they're getting are just amazing because
of course, yeah.
they could see what they always had in their head back then, but they couldn't actually see what the outcome was prior to printing it. So
it's a completely different skill set, I think, being able to visualize the image before you take the photo.
Yeah. Light meters used to play a really big part.
Yeah, bloody hell! I remember the little things you put on your forehead to get the lights
Pointed
right
at,
and stuff.
Yeah, pointed at the people and look at the numbers and think, I don't know what that means, but I'll just try and get it right.
We learned all about the zone meters and stuff. You have like your 0 to your 10, and you expose based on that. I've never used it because when I came into the field, which is probably why university is always a little bit outdated because they're teaching stuff far back. So I was learning stuff from freaking 2005, and I came into the industry, it was 2018, and that's when I graduated, and I never used a light meter. I just looked at the back of my screen and I just, could take a photo. But it's just like that appreciation for being able to see an image, before you take the photo, and being able to understand what the lighting's doing and how it's going to render in the camera. Not even on the sensor then. It would have been, on film. How is it going to render onto the film? It's incredible, man. You like just the time and the devotion that you would have had to put into the craft to really master it.
Yeah.
Fuck that. That would have
difficult times. And then having to wait 2 weeks to actually get the photos back and see them and work out, all right, well, so why has that got a red spot right in the middle of it?
What's going on here?
Yeah.
Then you need to remember what you did to try and piece together and work it back. And I just think I really appreciate the people who did that, and did it to a high degree. Obviously now with the technology that's on the market and what it allows us to do, it improves photography drastically. Like photography nowadays, you can take really good images. Do you feel like the change in technology that you've seen has lowered maybe the skill set for a photographer? Is it easier to be a photographer now?
No, I don't think it's easier. It's a much quicker process, and being able to see, literally take a photo and then look at it and go, oh, that didn't work out too well. I'll brighten it up, or I'll do whatever I need to do with it. I think it's definitely made that aspect of it easier. The reason that I don't think it's made photography itself easier is probably there's two reasons. A, as you touched on, it's pushed up the quality of photography. So everybody now really that claims to be a photographer should be able to take really good images. And B, there's not just the knowledge of how to use a camera and how the, aperture, ISO and shutter speed work together. It's literally about holding a little computer in your hands and having 1,000 different functions and knowing what all those functions do and are so that you can produce that A-grade image that you should be able to produce because there's all this technology around it now. So in some ways it's actually complicated the process. If you look back at, cameras from 10 or 15 years ago, there was no eye detection. There was no this and that and varieties of options that are almost endless. I mean, you look at the menu on a camera now and you've got a menu with sub-menus and the sub-menus have got sub-menus and really to get the most
crazy
out of it.
It's so daunting.
Yeah.
I was trying to, set this stream up and trying to take out the bloody the HDMI preview for my podcast yesterday. And I was just like, I was trying to ask ChatGPT where are the menus, and he doesn't even bloody know. This freaking AI robot has all the manuals he wants. He doesn't know where the freaking things are. He's going, sorry, I can't help you. It has complicated it in that way. Yeah. Completely agree.
I was kind of resistant from moving to DSLR to...
If you are watching, guys, ask us some questions. We have an amazing photographer, Dave Ross, 15 years experience, wedding photographer, corporate photographer. Just ask us some questions. We want to answer some audience questions. Make
them good too. Get deep. Don't just ask so what's your favourite thing? Get deep.
Get deep. Get philosophical. We got about 10 minutes left on this podcast and we want to have some questions come through. So what you were saying about the technology?
I had quite a lot of resistance around changing from DSLR to mirrorless.
Right.
And a lot of it was around the technological side of it. Technologia, as David Broadway would say. But a lot of it was around that. And it was like, holy crap, I've got this new piece of equipment and it's got so many different functions and variables. I don't know how to use it.
Yep.
Eventually I made the jump and did it. And now I don't think I could ever go back. But I think photographers now need to know a lot more from a technical, actually using the camera point of view than what they used to. But the old school guys with their film and their light meters had to have a really good understanding of the basics to be able to make sure that the limited tools that they had were able to produce the highest outcome that they possibly could.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, look, and I see that argument completely. I think, like phones, for instance, like, yeah, they do a really good job, and you can take a phone photo, and it's going to be a good job. But to get that best possible quality image, it's a freaking, like, I did this Ritz-Carlton shoot, and like, I'm exposure layering images together, to remove the color cast and to add in like that really crisp white light from a flash. And so we're producing really high-end architecture photography.
Yeah.
That, that technology that we have has enabled us to be able to produce those type of images. But to produce those images, it's a long process. It's not just clicking a button. You need to understand, that's just the basics. Set your tripod up correctly so it doesn't move. Use a timer. What exposure you're going to have. Bring the flash in. Take where you're going to position. Pardon me. Where you're going to position the flash. How you're going to bounce it. Are you going to use direct flash? You're going to use whatever kind of flash you're going to use. You're going to use a diffuser. Then you need to bring it into your software. You need to exposure blend. How are you going to do that? You're going to do it in Lightroom. You're going to do it in Photoshop. You're going to layer them a certain way. Like, it's a long process, Yeah. And it's not easy to produce those really, really high-end commercial images. Like, that's a lot of work to do. And the technology has provided a pathway to being able to produce those images, but that's a skill set in itself.
You need to learn how to do it.
You need to learn how to do it. It's not easy. It's really difficult. And in a way, it probably was just simpler when the expectation was we're just going to take a bunch of film photos, develop them, and then see what was good. It doesn't need to be to that pristine, clean, ultra high resolution, HDR exposure blended image. We're just happy with this basic photo.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, that's another part of the technology that's essential. Is the production of the actual photo, the post-production of the actual photo.
Yes.
And again, there are a million billion editors out there who do it as a profession. They don't shoot, they just edit. Sometimes there's a need for them, and sometimes we can do it ourselves. But if you're going to do it yourself, you really need to know how to use these programs like you said, Lightroom, Capture One, Photoshop, whatever it is that you're using. These aren't really easy, especially when you're first starting out with them.
So difficult.
These are not really easy programs to actually get a hang of and understand, and there are so many variables within them. Trying to know how to do what you want to do, like Google can be your best friend for a long time when you first start using these programs, because you simply don't know where the tool is that you need to use to get the effect that you're looking for.
See, I was really lucky because I've been using Photoshop since about 13 years old.
Yeah.
So it's like the back of my hand, like I got introduced to Photoshop in IT in year 9, so I've been using Photoshop for 16 years.
When I was 13, the only Photoshop was the counter at Big W where you put your film in and
there you go.
And got it back.
So
there was no editing software or anything back then, and there was nothing to edit because you had nothing in digital format.
Yeah. Completely different. But like I guess I'm lucky because I had that foundation. So, when I think about Photoshop, it doesn't scare me because I know the layout right now. I know exactly where every tool is.
Yep.
But I've been using it for over a decade.
Yep.
And coming into the industry, I guess if you are transitioning from film to mirrorless and then not really understanding the software, that would be a really difficult jump.
Oh yeah.
That's not an easy thing. Like, Photoshop's tricky, man.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of shit in there,
I remember the first time somebody showed me liquify in Photoshop, and I was like,
when was that?
Oh shit. That's a good question. A long time ago.
Yeah.
A long time. It was before that you actually got a subscription to Adobe.
Really?
You used to purchase.
What?
Well,
Adobe didn't have a subscription?
I think we were talking. It was like Photoshop.
Adobe's a ripoff.
4 or something, 3 or 4.
Yeah, right.
That's how long ago it was. A long time ago.
Yeah.
But there was no subscription plan. You used to just pay for the software, and then if you wanted the new version.
So what happened in that jump? Did Adobe just one day go, anyone who's paid doesn't get it anymore, and we're going to move to subscription?
No, you got to keep your Photoshop, but there was no updates to it. There was nothing. So eventually it just became uncompatible with everything.
Yeah.
And then it just didn't work. And if you wanted anything above that, because obviously they're quite clever in their how they operate in their marketing, they now have so many different products in the creative suite that they complement each other. So I'm sure you use more than one of them. I myself use Lightroom and Photoshop.
Yeah. I'm moving away from Adobe.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. DaVinci Resolve now for video editing. That's an upfront payment. You're paying, you're done.
Yep.
Brilliant. DaVinci Resolve's amazing software. Took a long time to learn.
Yeah.
I do have a background in, IT and all that. So it was all my background, so I didn't study it, but I've done a lot of computer stuff. So it was all right to pick up. But I hope to not use Adobe soon. Yeah. I don't like Adobe. It's too expensive.
Yeah.
But I'm so embedded in it, like I have my catalog, I have photos back from 2015 in there, that's like how long I'm going back.
Yeah. And that's the thing now as well. Like I'm getting, I wouldn't say I kind of am old, I guess, depending on what point of view you're looking at. But I'm not scared of technology, but unnecessary change is something that I'm like, I don't know if that's essential at the moment. Yeah. And whilst there are definitely some improvements that Adobe could make and some things that they could do to keep me a lot happier, I'm kind of like tossing up, well, do I really want to learn a whole new system to essentially get pretty much the same outcome? Maybe it's a second quicker per image, or maybe it's this or it's that.
I don't think there's much competing with Photoshop and Lightroom, truthfully. I think Lightroom and Photoshop are pretty good. Yep. Like there's not much that's beating them. Premiere Pro is not that good though. Premiere Pro is from a video editor perspective. Then you have DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci Resolve runs circles around that.
Yep.
DaVinci Resolve is a freaking phenomenal software. Yeah. It is so good. And I haven't used Premiere Pro too crazily, but I've dabbled in it. I've dabbled in Premiere Pro. I've dabbled in Final Cut. I've dabbled in, I think it was like Sony Vegas or something back in when I was something like that. Decade ago now.
Yeah.
I can call myself old as well. There's better software for video editing, but there's not really that better software for photo editing. I might be wrong. If someone thinks I'm wrong, just let me know. But I think Photoshop and Lightroom is pretty good. Yeah. The only thing I don't like about Adobe is their cost. It's freaking expensive. The photography package is not too bad, but if you start to buy the all-out package, you're spending like $1,000 a year.
Yep. Yeah. Well, because I wouldn't class myself as a teacher, but because I occasionally teach people how to use Adobe products, I'm actually on the teacher's plan.
Oh, yeah.
Which reduces the overall cost.
Lucky you.
Considerably.
How much do you pay you?
I do it monthly. I think it's about $18 a month.
How do you get on this teacher plan? How do you get on the teacher plan?
Don't tell everyone. Maybe this is not the right place to tell them. Yeah. You basically just go to plans, and then there's an option there as a teacher. Mm-hmm. When I came back into photography full-time in like 2018, my plan was to actually teach probably more than shoot. And so I got onto that plan at that stage, and because I still use it for educational purposes.
Where did that plan come from? Are you still trying to teach?
I don't have time anymore.
Yeah, right.
I don't have time. Yeah.
You're booked out.
I still do some individual kind of stuff, but I had a master plan on where I was going to have classes of 10 people and I was going to have like 6 running simultaneously and they were going to go for 8 weeks, and
there you go.
Shit, I overcomplicated it. But look, I found that I like variety, and just teaching people was great.
Teaching people is good.
It was a really good experience, but it wasn't something that I could just do full time. And I found that when I was teaching, I actually really wanted to be behind the camera.
Yeah, you want to be
doing it. So
fair enough. I think that's really interesting. Really interesting point. I'm going to ask you one more question before you wrap up.
Sure.
Because I have a meeting at 1:00 I've got to get to, so I'm cutting it a bit tight.
Yeah.
You've obviously built a very successful business. You got what? Well, you built a successful business. Photography, firstly, is not an easy business to build. Photography is a very hard industry to get into. And I want to make that very clear to people. Like, if you're trying to be a photographer, it's not easy. It's not an easy business to get into. And it's not an easy business to do well. It's not an easy business to master. And it's not an easy business to run. I think you need to respect yourself a lot, right? As the owner of the business. And I think the reason why you need to do that is because so many people do it for fun. And there's that blur, the line blurs between doing it as a hobby and doing it as a profession. But as a professional, you need to say, no, this is what I charge.
Yep.
So my question is,
I feel like this is going to be good.
This is going to be a good question. I'm trying to think of how to word it. From what I've gathered from what you've said, I think, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the thing that's made you succeed in what you've done is through communication and networking.
Yep.
All right. So how does networking play a role in success?
Oh, I was right. It is a good one.
There you go. And after you answer that,
there's a part B.
And yes, how do you network? What is networking? Because everyone's going to be asking, what is networking? How do you do it? So yeah, networking is important. What the fuck do you do to network?
What are you doing on Sunday afternoon, people?
Come along.
There's a photographers and creatives catch up at a place in East Perth. Reach out. We can give you a few more details on that.
There you go.
Okay, so yes, the communication side of it is definitely 100% one of the most important parts. Being able to communicate with people essentially allows you to understand what they need and communicate with them about what you can provide a solution for what they're trying to do. So could just give me the first part of the question again. How did you word that?
Yeah, sure. So how do you see networking as integral to business success? Because obviously networking and communication are the two fundamentals of having a successful business.
Yep.
So I guess how have you used them to get to where you are? And
Okay.
how do you view networking as integral to success?
Yep. All right. So one of the things I keep in mind is that negative feedback is going to spread generally about 7 times faster than positive feedback. So I try to ensure that every experience with a client is a positive one. Whether we come to an agreement and they decide to use my services or not, I hope that at the end of our time, whether it's emails or conversations or whatever, they feel like I've valued them and I've valued their time. And even though we may not be a fit for each other, I've maybe been able to teach them something or I've learned something from them. Now, I think a really large part of it is customer experience, right? So you can take the best photos in the entire world. If you make people feel uncomfortable, if they feel that you don't respect them or you don't value them, then you will not get very far in business at all. So I feel like it's about providing an experience. What I want my clients to talk to their friends or their colleagues about is the experience. It's not, hey, I got this headshot and don't I look great? It's, I felt really nervous before I went to get the headshot done. This guy has, made me feel really comfortable in front of the camera. It actually ended up being a fun outcome. And I quite enjoyed the session. And at the end of it, the headshot was exactly what I wanted. So for me, it's an end-to-end experience. And this all comes down to communication from the first conversation on the phone, from the first email you send them, right through until you send through the photos and your last email following that up, if that's what you choose to do. The entire experience should be a good one. It should be a positive one.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's great.
Now, for whether a client decides to go with you or not, and I've had this happen before, I've had people contacting me saying, Bob from XYZ told me to get in contact with you, and I think Bob from XYZ didn't actually use me. They went with another option. But obviously something I've done with Bob has made him, it's stuck in his head and he sees some value in it and he's referring me to other people. So that's one aspect of the networking, but that it's got to really be an experience. It's got to be a client experience, not just a photo.
So you're building relationships with people. That's what I'm hearing. Good relationships with people, and then people are referring you onto other people because their relationship with you is good.
Correct. Yep.
Brilliant.
That's exactly right. I'm also a member and I do all the photography for Joondalup Business Association. I don't know, there's a plug. I get some work through those guys. When I go to networking events, I look for people that I enjoy speaking to. I don't necessarily look for target clients. I speak to people that I enjoy speaking to, and I enjoy spending time with. And I feel like you speak genuinely with them. And through time, there's something in the conversation, probably both ways, where you think that would be really good. And again, for that person to pass that information on to someone else is a really effective tool for marketing. But obviously, I attend where I can. I attend the JBA networking sessions and all that sort of stuff as well. Again, it's not all about developing business, but there's a lot of people there, and out of 50 people or 80 people, if 3 of them tell their friends or tell their family about what you do, and they go with you, then it's like a web. It just spreads. So that's another large part of it. And then I think one thing which is really, really overlooked, and I know you and I do it, and the people that we generally hang out with do it, is having a network of people in the industry, having a network of people who are other photographers, videographers. There are a couple of ways you can see it. You can look at them as your competition and the danger out there, or you can look at them as people that you can learn from and engage with and be friends with and support. I'm a firm believer that supporting someone else in business is never going to affect your own badly. It's never going to be a negative. So I think really making sure that people view your business in a positive light, whether you end up doing the job for them or not, they don't feel like it's been, oh, well, I didn't use him, and as soon as I said no, he hung up the phone. I let people know that even if they're not going to use me, they're always welcome to call back if they've got a challenge, and I'm happy to try and help them resolve it. I'm happy to talk it through with them. But I think just being genuine and really trying to do what you can for other people is by far the best way to go. You can, if you want to exclude your competition and treat them as competition, as like, the enemy, that's great, but you ain't going to have many people giving you referral jobs. And these guys are really, there is so much knowledge in those kind of circles that if you don't choose to participate in providing your knowledge and taking on other people's, essentially you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're turning down something that could be a really positive experience and really turning it into a negative one for yourself and the other people around you. So it's all about having professionalism, but being approachable and being honest. I think that's what a lot of it comes down to. And don't ever see anybody as someone who can't help your business, whether they can or can't. People are still, a really good asset and something really nice to have around. And if you can get the most out of those people and they can get the most out of you, and you value each other's friendship or the relationship you have, I think it'll always lead to good things.
Yeah, brilliant. That's some great advice from Dave just there. Well said. I think, completely agree. Completely agree with everything you said. And that's what makes a successful business owner. You have to have that mindset, open-minded, transparent, and always looking to build relationships with people. And then those relationships are going to foster work. And when you can foster more work and build more relationships, your name's going to get out there more. And the more people who know your name, the more people are going to hire you. That's all it comes down to. You need to be likable. And there's a few fundamental human skills that you need to be likable, right? And
it certainly helps.
Yeah. Well, that was a really interesting conversation, Dave. I'm going to cut it off on your amazing note there, because I think that's probably the most valuable thing anyone's ever said on this podcast so far. There's 4 episodes, and that's probably the most valuable. So if you are watching and you have been listening, take that snip and freaking take some advice from Dave, because that's completely true. Completely agree. That's really, really good advice. All right. Thank you guys for watching. I hope everyone had a great time on the podcast today. We did have a few viewers. We had like 100 people come through, and we have about 3 or 4 people in here right now watching us live, talking shit, drinking whiskey. We've had a really good time. Thank you for sticking with us. Next time, if you are watching the podcast, bloody ask us some questions. We are here to answer questions. Dave has so much experience. I don't have as much experience, but I have some knowledge. I can answer some questions. Just ask us. We're not scary, are we? Maybe
I don't think so.
No, we might be scary. But that was a lot of fun. We'll do it again, eh?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. All right, let's end it. Catch you later, guys. Goodbye.
Ciao.